Hey everyone, and welcome to the Memo podcast, where we sit down with speakers, artists, makers, and really the minds behind the Memo Creative Festival that is coming up in October here in Saskatoon. I'm your guest host today, Corey Michel, and I am filling in for the one and only Taylor Pfeiffer, who is really the mind behind the Memo Creative Festival, and hoping to do a decent job in his absence. I'm especially excited to be hosting this episode with someone I've had the pleasure of seeing speak at a few EO entrepreneur organization events over the past year, took in a few webinars. Mike Schwarz, the founder and CEO of MyZone AI. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, Corey. Good to see you.
Yeah, cool. So just a little background. MyZone AI is a digital transformation agency helping entrepreneurs really navigate the fast-moving world of AI, artificial intelligence. With over 20 years of experience in business automation and scaling startups, Mike has worked with literally thousands of entrepreneurs across the EO and YPO, Young Presidents Organization groups, developing frameworks that make AI adoption kind of practical and profitable. There's so much complexity to it, and how to break that down and actually start to implement things in a meaningful way. Really takes a no-nonsense approach to making that happen too. I've seen and sat in on a few of his talks, and Mike, you do a tremendous job of making it relatable and making it real for people. Really, whether it's workshops, keynotes, or I think upcoming book, if I'm not mistaken, Mike's mission is to really empower business owners with the tools and the confidence needed to succeed in the AI era. So, welcome, Mike. I know that you do a lot of travel and your schedule is pretty packed with different speaking engagements. So really just appreciate you taking the time to be a part of the podcast and, be a part of Memo. We're super pumped to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. And like I said, just before we started the call, like one of my top 3 favorite things to do is just like all 3 of those involve talking with people about AI. So this is my new hobby. and you talked about over 20 years. I just want to reflecting back. When I started doing digital automation it was the year 2000, I just graduated from UBC. And the first project we took on was called clubvibes.com and then clubzone.com. And we were automating the nightlife industry. This was a time when we were introducing them to Hotmail. We were teaching them about creating their first website. So this journey has been going on a long time. If you can reflect back to GeoCities and Hotmail days, like that's when we started learning about technical automation, automating nightlife, and developing social media before Friendster, and ticketing before, like online e-commerce ticketing before Ticketmaster. It's a journey that spans back to when I had a full head of hair.
Hey, I like your haircut. I can feel the haircut vibes going on there. Some familiarity. Well, that was going to be kind of like my first question, a little bit of like what has been sort of the background that's led you to starting an AI marketing company, and how did this come about for you? AI is, from a broad strokes perspective, obviously fairly new. I would say, kind of ChatGPT and the launch of that a few years ago was really thrust it into the limelight, but obviously it's been around for a lot longer than that. What was sort of the impetus?
I think it comes from a very toxic trait I have. I'm an extremely impatient person. So I remember the moment when I realized I needed to disrupt nightlife. I was standing in a lineup in front of a nightclub in Vancouver called Richards on Richards. There was a huge lineup. I remember all the VIPs and hot girls were getting ushered in past the doorman. And I was like, how come we're not getting in? And after waiting in that lineup for 45 minutes at the tender age of 19, we get into the club and it's like half full. And I'm like, what the F? This doesn't make sense. This is so inefficient. I get so irritated by systems that just are inefficient, like waiting for driver's license or sitting in a medical center waiting room and the doctor's an hour and a half late. And just that kind of stuff just drives me nuts. Or the worst, getting on the phone with the bank and trying to like confirm that you are you and that kind of stuff. It's just drives me nuts. I don't know where that comes from. Probably from maybe like ADHD or something. I'm just driven. My personality is like go make stuff move ever since I was a little kid. So
I think kind of a classic entrepreneurial trait, if you will.
Yeah. And so it can be toxic in relationships and something I have to like really moderate and not always be so impatient. But it also really drives me to see the pattern in the matrix where others don't, like the little things that irritate me that others don't even see or notice. So Yeah, it goes back to that. And first thing we did is like, let's automate nightclub guest lists, like getting in lineups and getting through the doors. And it started there and developing ticketing systems. And I think I just got a lot of, I feel a lot of personal reward if I can take something and just make it even that little 1% or 2% or 5% more efficient. I get so excited. My entire life is incredibly automated. Like I don't type anymore. I just speak into microphones. I don't vacuum in those robots going around. I don't flip light switches. I just talk to the computer whose name I will not mention, or you'll hear a bunch of speakers going off. And I've just always been obsessed with hyper efficiency. And it's almost like it's a soothing kind of like, cleaning your house sometimes is therapeutic for me. It's like making things more efficient. That's my 1% better.
Very cool. Very cool. And so curious then, how does that translate into, I guess, what's the elevator pitch on MyZone AI, and what is it that that your group does? I know you do a lot of speaking events and are super passionate about bringing your perspective and helping people better understand how to use it. What does your group do? What does your company get up to on a more
Yeah.
tangible basis, I guess?
Funny, haven't been practicing my elevator pitch that much recently because the biggest challenge we have right now is not so much acquiring leads or selling. Like we don't have any sales reps in the entire organization. I'm the only one, and I do that in 10% of my time. So the sales pitch and the funnel, we haven't even been working on that. We're all working on how do we make our own systems and processes more efficient so that we can take what we have and scale it to thousands of people. Like we only have a few hundred clients. But my elevator pitch is like we help small to medium-sized businesses or SMBs scale up smarter. And the reason we used the word smarter was to hint at intelligence, but noting that intelligence is a lot broader than just AI. There's a ton of situations where we'll meet with a client and figure out a way to make a system or process way more efficient. Like, oh my God, I love AI. I'm like, well, that's not even AI. We just, centralized your data, automated processes with using classic technology. So of course, AI makes all of this a lot more sexy and exciting right now, but technical automation has been going on for a long time. There's still a lot of companies that are, working off of emails and spreadsheets and haven't even figured out CRMs or drip email flows and things like that from the past. So it's all about identifying the processes within a company that are most inefficient, that would have the highest potential return on investment, and then investing in those things, taking the value of that automation and then freeing up time or capital and then investing into the next. So I see automation as kind of like pushing that giant flywheel that you've probably read in the book, Good to Great. And as you just get a little bit more efficient, the wheel gets a little bit easier to turn and a little bit easier to turn. And before you know it, these companies are just flying. But it's an exciting journey because the end path, the end vision for almost all of my clients now with AI is we can take companies and within 2-3 years from start, look at 90% automation of the business is not an uncommon target.
Impressive. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like you say, it's like AI and the idea of business automation has been around for a long time, and it's just like the tools just continue to get better. And I guess that leads me to sort of if you think about the creative space and creative industries, there's perspectives, and either AI is the savior or the destroyer of creativity, so to speak. It depends on who you ask, and different people are going to have very different perspectives. And I guess from your perspective, how should creative people actually be thinking about AI right now?
Yeah, that's interesting on the different perspectives. I think the difference in perspectives is probably the strongest within the creative industry. So I'm a little bit nervous about going to the conference. I might get booed off the stage with tomatoes or something just from supporting an industry that is disrupting so many people in the creative space. So it's very, very polarized right now. And I think if you read any of the Twitter comments with GPT-5 or when VO3 comes out, or the YouTube comments on that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people that hate it right now because they see it as, well, it's been training for free off of all of my data. I didn't give you permission for that. And now it's replicating my type of work and my job, my career path has changed. So people, I mean, think about this. If you were investing your life's work into something and found somebody was leeching off of that training data and then disrupting you, so you had to go and change your career or change your career path significantly, I think he'd be pretty pissed. So that's a general frustration. I would venture to say like half of the creative world is kind of frustrated. I think the other half is looking at it more like embracing it and learning it and mastering it and saying, hey, this is a chance for me to really change the way that I am being creative, to amplify things, to do less of the administrative processes and just really move up strategically in how I'm being creative. So this most basic form, like you can think like get rid of some of the administrative stuff. You know, if you're a creative person, a lot of the time we start out thinking we want to be really creative, but then as your business or practice grows, you might end up spending 70-80% of your time administrative, chatting with clients, collecting data, QAing things and fixing bugs and writing reports and all that crap. So one of the ways that I encourage my clients to get adoption is not so much just looking at return on investment through automation, but looking at what brings you happiness, what brings you joy in your day. And then the opposite, what is the stuff that you just absolutely hate doing? Let AI take some of that stuff that you just hate doing to free up your time to be more creative in different ways. And that's usually the spark that gets people saying like, okay, this isn't just coming from my job. This is going to 10x my creative output. But the future right now is very uncertain. If you take a whole bunch of creatives and you 10x their creative output over a 1 year period, is there enough creative demand for all that increase in supply? And how does that affect the whole economy? And there's a lot of question marks about the future right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, and coming from a marketing agency background, as we've adopted and start using AI, and we have been for some time now, is one of the analogies that was used, I read about early, and I've used it a few times, is like, think about the world of advertising, of marketing, before the Adobe suite of tools. And it was like, well, if you think about, and there's the people doing hand-drawn illustrations and drawings and creating hand artwork, and this new tool came along, and there was a lot of resistance and a lot of fear and a lot of pushback around that. And yet it was now figuring out, okay, how do I harness the power of this new tool in how I'm doing the work that I'm doing now? It's like, you need to understand it. You need to be a master of these different tools in the Adobe suite, even to get in the game. If you're thinking about, from a design or a graphic design or, those sorts of types of roles, and how to now, a lot of parallels to that and AI and ChatGPT and, some of the more common tools. And there's so many different tools that are out there right now. But curious, you talk to literally thousands of businesses, business owners, creatives through your different events and engagements. What are some of the most common fears or blocks that you hear of, when it comes to AI and adoption of it?
Yeah, reflecting on, you talk about the Adobe suite. I mean, a lot of what helps me figure out how adoption will work is reflecting on, first of all, my own experiences of being there before social media and watching how social media was adopted, or before e-commerce, or even part of the sort of internet revolution. Looking at those past examples, typically it's the ones that went up and tried to battle, like, like the music industry fighting against streaming music and Napster and the whole thing, or the people that moved slower, like the Blockbusters versus the Netflix on streaming. It's anybody that sort of goes against these massive change forces. They might have a short-term kind of like Luddite movement or some sort of revolution that's there, but it eventually, like, the greater forces will overpower it. I think this is what's happening again here right now. I do empathize with those that are having their careers disrupted, or the fears and the uncertainty, or copywriters on Upwork that have watched their rates drop because demand is being soaked up by AI tools, or even lawyers and software developers. A lot of us are feeling it already. So I do empathize with that change. I think the most valuable thing that people need to do right now is embrace it. The sooner that you can be the music industry veteran who says, we need to embrace streaming and downloads and stop fighting against this tide, I think the better off. But yeah, the biggest fear that everybody had is it's a fear that goes back to caveman days. It's the fear of change. Right? Anything that's different. Think back, if you're, well, you can't reflect on this personally, but imagine you're in a tribe, and the stranger walks into your tribe or anything different from the outside, that could be a threat, right? So anything that's different or new, we have a genetic predisposition to be like, danger, who are you? Kill. We get that reaction today. So we're just predisposed as human beings to resist change, to fight against it, and to treat it as some form of danger. And that's normal. So I think like the biggest challenge that I have, and it's not so much about can the technology do things. Like the technology is overwhelmingly powerful. Most people are tapping into 1 or 2% of the potential of AI. It's not a technical challenge. It's a change management one. It's a people challenge. It's a HR challenge. It's emotional. It's career planning. It's a lot of things. So those are the biggest fears people have, is the fear of the unknown. I mean, you leave civilizations untouched on islands in history, and they will invent religions out of the blue to just conquer the fear of the unknown. We can't handle that very well as humans. We need to have answers. And so everyone's developing these very polarized narratives right now, but it's a lot of like, we don't know what's coming. We don't fully understand it. It's, they talk about a technical singularity. Like things are moving and changing so fast. We can't see past that because you're talking about the convergence of multiple exponentials. So even those of us that have been studying this, 10 hours a day for 20 years, we're just as confused as the rest of us, and it's that fear of the unknown that I think is the biggest challenge for everyone. Where do I start? What do I invest in? What's going to happen to my career? What about my kids? Who's stealing what? Why am I going to be fairly compensated? I mean, the list of questions and fears go on. So it's overcoming that and realizing like, I need to change, and this change is going to be a little bit painful, but on the other side, there's a world of abundance. I think getting that right mindset, that's the hardest part.
And so you kind of led right into my next question here. It's like you had the list of questions, but you actually don't.
Just so you guys know, Corey offered to send me the questions, but I don't want to know the questions.
Yeah, I was like, Mike, you seem like a guy that can just like go off the cuff. And he's like, yeah, that's actually my preference. So it was good. But really kind of like you mentioned, the overwhelm factor that can come with this space. And I guess if you're thinking about people that are curious, but feeling that level of overwhelm or anxiety, call it what you will, what would be like a simple and approachable starting point to integrate AI into like a creative workflow, for example? And any examples or things that come to mind there?
Well, I mean, the whole book and the framework that we're building is about like the steps and the order of operations for adoption. So step one in my AI blueprint is awareness, just understanding what's going on. I think a lot of fear comes from unknown, and the more that you know about what's happening and where it's going, the less fear you're going to have. But I think probably the most basic starting point for people is like realizing that this is not a like figuring out how to use Adobe Photoshop. That's one application you can invest in. This is changing everything, everywhere, all at once. This is a much longer journey. It might take like, geez, I've been studying this for so long, and it's a never-ending journey of learning. It's not like learning a specific field. It's learning business. Like it affects education, your children, your relationships, the economy, the government, politics, war. Everything is affected. So it's a completely new operating system. So just recognize this is something that's massive, and a journey of 1.6 million kilometers begins with regular, consistent steps. So I like to think of it as like, Corey, if you were trying to get in shape, what's probably the number one most important thing if you want to have a successful health outcome, say in 2 years? What would you say that is?
Consistency.
Yeah. Scheduling, trainers,
Being
accountability,
there, showing up,
even when you're
having a program that you enjoy and you actually like to do. That's maybe a stretch.
making it fun, making it easy. Sounds like we're getting into a book called Atomic Habits here, but yeah, changing your habits to make it fun and easy. And so committing to a daily routine, scheduling it in, even if it's just 15 minutes a day that you're going to read AI news, or you're going to schedule 1 hour every Friday where you're just going to play around with the tools. There's so many things that you can and should be doing. Some of my favorites, like finding a couple of AI influencers on YouTube that you relate with, that sort of align with your career and your industry and your technical proficiency. that they speak, and you're like, I get it. And just watching every video that they produce, that can be enough to get that spark going. But I think just using the tools on a regular basis. One of the things that we recommend with sort of this whole adoption is letting people use AI at home. When you start using it for making your food, or a friend of mine is planning his wedding and building wedding websites and sending out, like, when you're using it and you're just day to day and making your home life easier, that's another way to help with adoption. But I think it's, back to the fitness example, is making time for it almost every day, or three days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off kind of schedule. Commit to it. It's a long journey that's going to require repetition more than total time in a session. It's like learning a language. You're not going to learn a language in an 8-hour block.
We're my family and I are going to Japan this fall, and it's the Duolingo thing. It's like, hey, am I gonna learn Japanese over the course of the next little bit? No, but I'm on a 90-day Duolingo streak, and I can know a hell of a lot more now than I did a couple months ago. So just that repetition and consistency for sure.
Yeah, and the repetition and consistency for learning language or learning anything, the frequency and repetition is way more important than the total exposure. I remember I studied 5 languages. I learned Japanese, Chinese, German, French. And so through university, I did a lot of learning how to learn. I've just been obsessed with learning my whole life. And I remember one of the charts, I took a course out when I was at Cap College. It's now Capilano University. It was the first year course that everyone would take to try to boost their GPA so we could get into commerce. It was called ARC 100, and it would teach you like how to be a good student. And I nerded out on that. I loved it. And there was this one thing, they showed these retention curves for learning over time. And, the first curve is if you have a 2-hour learning session, they show the retention of the information sort of forms this U, and then it comes up, not as high as the beginning, but there's this, basically, if you want to be remembered, be the first to talk and the last to talk, and everyone forgets all the crap in the middle. And so one of the strategies to improve learning retention is, instead of having one long 2-hour session, break it up to little 15-minute, 15-minute, 15-minute. And they compared that learning curve, and retention was like much higher overall by breaking it into sections. And so playing around with that, knowing that, like, if you want to learn Japanese, the best thing that you could do is do it every night for 5 minutes right before you fall asleep. A lot of learning crystallizes in your dreams. So if you want to really nerd out on maximizing learning, read some AI paper or just interact with AI for 5-10 minutes every night before you go to sleep. And after a month, you'll probably have bigger impact than somebody who's studying it for like 2 hours once a week.
Bite size, make it digestible. Well, and speaking about making it digestible, you talked about, the influence of AI on politics, on war, on business, on life, how we're living. I guess let's maybe talk a little bit more like daily work. And I think one of the things that I've heard and experienced, being in the marketing and creative business, is the concern around losing your creative voice or losing your creative identity with the integration of these kinds of tools. And I guess, how would you respond to that kind of a perspective? And then, kind of building on that, and not to seed the answer, so to speak, but, how and where does human intuition still play a role in the creative space, in thinking about designers and writers and developers and those types of roles and people?
Let's start maybe just looking at the slice of content writing, because that impacts almost all of us, regardless of what field or creative space that you're in. Even if you're a designer, you're still writing. I think the first way that we maintain our identity is realizing that we can customize these tools to sound and look the way that we want. Developing a personal brand voice. Like, I just created a custom GPT recently, which is like a customized version of ChatGPT. I was testing out the deep research capabilities of GPT-5, and now it can analyze I did deep research on Gmail. That's new in the about last month. And so I had to go through hundreds of my emails and analyze my voice and develop Mike Schwarz personal brand voice document. And I read through it, and it was hilarious. It was very insightful. And you learn a lot about yourself by having AI analyze how you communicate. And asking it to be objective and look at the pros and cons and even provide coaching advice is quite fascinating. But anyways, I developed that brand voice document, and then I develop a custom GPT. So all of my communication has to sound like that. So there's no more of these like M dashes. I use a lot of like triple dots after things, and the way that I use exclamation marks and emojis, like it all sounds like me. So if you take the time to train an agent or a custom chatbot or a custom GPT to sound like you and adhere to your voice, that's one thing. I think the other thing is realizing that we're at a stage right now where AI is really a thought partner. It's not meant to replace you. You just change your role. Like it's less administrative and more super managerial. Humans, instead of doing the administrative process, what we're now supposed to do to become an AI first individual or organization is automate that process, elevate yourself to what we call like the human in the loop that oversees the agent, that assesses the quality, that gives the QA feedback, that gives it new training data. So most of the time, like there's a few systems now that are fully automated, but most of them are like max out at 90%. And the creative element comes in from like just being strategic, having a lot more free time and saying, how can I guide this AI, or how can I connect it to multiple AIs and start to build these creative workflows? The creativity is actually happening through the automation. One example of automation that we're doing right now with VO3, the new video tool from Google that came out a couple of months ago that is freaking a lot of creatives out. The creative process we're working in is how can we build a system to fully automate the creation of VO3 videos so that we can interview people, interview clients, interview thought leaders, present multiple scripts. We then come in and choose which is our favorite scripts and then give our feedback using a microphone, never typing, and just having these interactions with these agents and watching the creative strategies evolve. And then once we like those strategies, now go ahead and come up with the various scripts, feed them off via API, and suddenly a whole bunch of different video slices come up and we choose our favorite one. So we're no longer in there designing and editing and writing. We're guiding and we're becoming that supervisory layer. And we're like, now that you can 10x my output, instead of me creating one set of videos for a client for remarketing on YouTube, I'm creating 20 of them for super cheap and am able to A/B test a whole bunch of different strategies. So I still feel like I'm being super creative, but my role in that creative process is completely changed.
Yeah, well, no, it's interesting. Like a few of just some of the learnings that I've had, from looking at and monitoring a whole bunch of different AI thought leaders, but through some of the webinars that I took in that you provided, Mike, was the idea of interview me, like getting the AI to interview you so it has the perspective. And that way it's like you're leveraging the human insight and the human thought process, and then you can leverage the AI to help craft whatever narrative or solution or kind of writing content that you need to pull from that. And that was a real eye opener for me, because it's like if you just ask a simple question or a super complex question, it gives you a generic answer based on all the things that are out there. But if you start to layer it and really start to work with it, viewing the AI more as like a creative partner or like an assistant that you can, it's like, hey, I now have an intern at my beck and call. I have an assistant at my back, and you can direct it on what to do, and it goes and does the things. And it does things so quickly and so impressively. And then still like, okay, some of these things might be here and some of them might be way out there, and then guiding it to where it needs to be. And I guess that is sort of, what do you feel that that AI tools can not do, at least not well enough, without that level of human input at this point?
Yeah, that point there about guiding it is so important. I just want to reflect on that just for 1 second, because a lot of people that think AI just puts out slop, they haven't figured out how to guide it properly. So one example is you can say, hey, write me a 500-word blog article on blah, and just boop, there you go. And you read it and you're like, oh, that's not very good. And you might play around with model selection and discover GPT 4.5 or the new 5 thinking, or you find Claude, or you find a model that you like. Okay, there's some model selection, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's a lot better. But you can just, like you said, just keep layering and layering and layering. First of all, you can brainstorm around the original strategy and have a thought partner, and it can analyze news feeds and what's trending and what's in your brain, what's in your email, what's on your Slack threads. And you can have these interactive conversations just to come up with the ideas and the synopses, like what are we actually doing? That's a creative back and forth process. But just on the writing, like having it interview you and ask you questions to fill in any missing context, or when we automatically generate blog articles, people, most of it is just interviewing the thought leader, asking the right questions, having their brand voice, and yeah, having that back and forth relationship. So a lot of people that are struggling with AI, or a very common first way that people use it is like they just give it instructions, do this, do that, and then they measure the output. But you want to treat it like, I've read this before, and I think it's a great analogy. You want to treat it like it's a smart intern that just joined your company, and you're not going to be like, just go do this, and it comes back and it's crap, and you're like, you're fired. No, you're going to build a relationship with them, and you're going to give them lots of context. And then version 1 is going to come back and you're going to give it feedback. And you need to have that sort of relationship with AI as well to get that type of output. Now, I'm going to apologize because going off on that tangent, can you remind me what the actual original question was?
Yeah, no, just like if there's anything that AI that
What it's bad at.
what can it not do today, or at least like not well enough without that level of human insight, interaction, to kind of get it to that place where it is doing solid work.
Very little, very little. When it's done properly, so we call the edge of what AI is capable of, like calling it like a jagged frontier of expansion of knowledge and skill set. And the reason they're calling it jagged is because it can be really, really good at one thing, but then it like screws up on counting the number of R's in strawberry, or it doesn't know how to tie its own shoes, kind of thing. So there are some things where you feel like you're talking to something smarter than Albert Einstein. I've had those moments, and then the next moment, like, man, you're just so dumb. You hallucinated over the simplest thing here. But almost all of the time when I see those, as long as see those hallucinations or see those major mistakes, as long as you are an expert in that area and you can guide it and you can recognize those things or ask the right questions or know how to frame it, know how to guide it, it's pretty rare that it can't resolve those things. So there's a bunch of strategies that you can use to basically help it through those things that it sucks at. Like reducing hallucinations. First of all, we saw, like with GPT-5 that just came out like 4 days ago, we saw a massive reduction in hallucinations on using the thinking mode. I think it was about 5 to 6% hallucination rate on the previous O3 model, and we dropped to 0.9% with GPT-5 thinking. So just from model selection and giving it more time to think, we're seeing it just being a lot better at things. I think also there's a whole bunch of just random tricks and hacks, like some of the older concepts that anyone familiar with AI, chain of thought thinking, like break things down step by step and rethink your work, or having multiple models analyze each other's work, or go back and reflect on your work and try again. Or if you're doing deep research, this tip came from a friend of mine in EO Halifax, Matt from Simplicity. He talked about the annotated bibliography, where he would get like O3. And I had to look up what bibliography actually meant. I hadn't used that word since grade 12. But it's a list of books and sources that you want to use in your writing. So if you have it do the research in advance, and you prompt it carefully to say, look for reputable sources for this deep research project, and first go out and just identify which sources are good, which ones are getting citations, and then come up with like an annotated bibliography, like these are the sources that I want. And then you have it go off and do deep research. The quality of the work that comes back is significantly higher. So there are many situations where it'll put out crap work, it'll put out slop, but I would say almost all the time, like 90% of the time, with proper training around prompt engineering or various tricks or having the right human in the loop or having the right human interaction, most of those situations can be solved. But I think the challenging thing is like, we don't know what we don't know. And if you're not the expert and it tells you something like, how do I optimize my Google ads? And it hits you with this brilliant idea, and you're not a Google ads expert and you don't know how to question it, how to reflect, how to break down the chain of thought, how to create an annotated bibliography, or whatever all those tools are to reduce those hallucinations, it can be very risky. Or imagine you're doing your own legal work and you don't run it past a lawyer. Is it safe? The document? No, that's the challenge, is you don't know what you don't know. And it can be very convincing that it's the expert when it's really just making something up.
And then you challenge it and it's like, oh yeah, good point, and I did get that wrong. And so yeah, it is making sure that, if there is facts and figures that need to be there, that's been my experience as well. Well, and what's interesting is, the idea of AI coming up with the just generic work and kind of creative laziness, so to speak. It's like, well, no, it's less about that. It's more about how you prompt, how you layer, how you guide the tools to get it to where it's going to create great outputs, because it's typically not going to be on the first prompt that you give it. It's how do you build on top of that, has been my observation and experience personally.
Yeah, I mean, up until 4 days ago, that was exactly my experience as well. Ethan Mollick, who's a thought leader in the space, and he wrote the book Co-Intelligence. I'm on his Substack newsletter list, and he says it's all changed now with GPT-5 thinking. Like the article of his recent sort of thought leadership was around like it just does stuff, and then he went on to explain that for 10 minutes, and it's like it's the newest GPT-5 thinking model is like, ignore the Twitter comments. Like it is, everybody in the know that's been testing it properly is like, it's the best model at pretty much everything. And it just figures things out. So you need to guide it a lot less. It just goes the extra mile and starts to do things and think about things and present things. And we're having a lot of those of us that are like I've been testing GPT-5 for probably 20 hours in the last 4 days, having a lot of these like, wow, I didn't ask for that. It just goes off and does more. So I think the intuition of the models is going to continue to improve over time. I've been predicting this. I say we, like those of us that do AI research full time. I've been predicting for a long time that the skill of prompting is going to be like the skill of DOS prompting. Remember when you needed to know how to do DOS prompts and directories and catalogs and loading
Yeah.
files? And it was replaced in Windows 95 with what? A double click, right? So I think the models will know enough about you that the prompt engineering side will be limited to the software developers who are building agentic systems and need to really talk to the models. But for the most part, I believe GPT-5 thinking is a bit of a hint at what's to come with like what Ethan is saying. It just figures things out. It just knows you. You don't have to ask it perfectly. It will ask you to clarify, and it can look at the data and just figure things out on its own.
Fast evolution, and I think about the evolution and shifting gears, I guess, a little bit. You've got a front row seat, like you say. You are one of the thought leaders, in my opinion and perspective, and I guess as this continues to evolve with both AI and creativity, think about the next 2-3 years, and what does the creative team of the future look like, given the shifts in evolution and ongoing change that's happening in the industry?
I think the first step is embracing it, learning how to use all of the use the models to their fullest. That's step one. And then people start to realize like, hey, I can connect these models with APIs, connect them, like APIs just being the plugs into your other data sources, your other software, think of it as the connectors. Once they realize that they can now customize these models into custom chatbots and custom GPTs, they'll progress into connecting these custom versions into other data sources using APIs. They progress into building quasi agents. People call them agents, but they're not truly agents, but more like using tools like make.com and N8N, which is workflow automation infused with intelligence, now called intelligent process automation, or IPA. That's sort of the path to graduation. So figuring out ChatGPT, learning how to prompt, customizing it, personalizing it, building custom chatbots, connecting things with APIs, building agentic workflows, learning how to become the human in the loop. That's the path. And it takes about 6 to 12 months of training and deep investment to get there. And then all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of these quasi agents that are just doing stuff, and you're checking over them and giving feedback to developers, or you're in the trenches yourself, adjusting prompts, adjusting training data, coming up with new ways to connect these systems together. That's kind of the journey that we're seeing. So I encourage anybody who's walking down the path of AI to set a goal, say in 2 years or less, you should be 90% automated of all the administrative processes that you currently have. And so we call the process of identifying that process mapping. Like you look at all the processes that you do on a day-to-day. So say you're a sole proprietor You just track everything that you're doing from sales to accounting to invoicing to emailing to designing to prototyping, whatever. You list it all out. How much time are you spending on all of those things? And we look at like what percentage of that can be automated with AI. And you may not know that, but you could bring in an expert and they can very quickly say, 80% of this process, 100% of this process, 90% of that, this one, too much uncertainty. No, no, yes, no, yes. And then we go through and just start automating. We sort by that column, ROI and look for quick wins, things that you can automate sort of in 3 months or less. So that's where I think the role really changes is sort of progressing down this path of realizing that it's a lot more than just using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, to customizing it, personalizing it, connecting it, and then building these automated flows. That's the next sort of 12 to 18 months for most people. It keeps going. It's like it gets exciting beyond there. And one thing I wanted to talk about, because you brought this up and it reminded me of one of these moments I had with one of my favorite YouTube influencers, Wes Roth. Those of you that are fairly technical probably already know him or love him. There was this paper that he studied where it was freaky. I just want to share this, what's possible, how these things just kind of do stuff and they intuitively evolve on their own. It's actually, we've now seen studies out of MIT where it can get smarter on its own without even needing to know if it's right or not, and not even needing to have human feedback. And the idea is that the path of intelligent evolution might just be already laid out for us without needing anything. And so the way AI gets smarter, typically in the past, there's a bit of a transition right now from human feedback to synthetic data and synthetic feedback. This might be too technical for this call, but I just want to say it was like this fascinating paper where like the reward signals that AI was taking in this study, it could use its own intuition about whether it felt confident that it was right or not, was enough to provide the guidance so that it could adjust its own brain or its weightings to get smarter simply based on its intuition. Because it's sort of like statistical theory. Like, if you look at the way that cars drive across a highway over time, a lot of things in life will follow this sort of standard normal distribution pattern. And they found that AI on its own, without any humans involved or even knowing whether the answer was right or not, it was able to adjust its reward signals based on the intuition on whether or not it felt confident in the outcome. So the point of this sort of nerdy side here is that there's a lot of weird things happening behind the scenes that people are just starting to tap into, that the path for intelligence might not even require verifiable rewards or verifiable like a lot of what the training is happening right now, it has to confirm that it knows that this is a right answer or a wrong answer. Like, that's a cat, that's a dog, or here's the math solution, or here it's not. But now we're in this sort of transition where there's like this fuzzy logic where we're not even sure if it's right or not, but simply based on the intuition that the AI has, it can reward itself and get smarter with us just stepping back. So we're really close. A lot of us, like the accelerationists in the space, think we're really close to these breakthrough moments where AI is just going to run away and jump up. Right now, it's sort of like 130, 140 IQ. I think that what's going to happen in the next 12 to 1 to 2 years, you're going to see this intelligence explosion where the models just get smarter on their own. And that's the scary part. That's why like everybody in the space is investing trillions of dollars into data centers and infrastructure. It's not about like, oh, we can automate 90% of your work today, or, oh, we can make your videos cooler. It's about, this is going to change everything. It's accelerating like this. And there's going to be that spark, this intelligence explosion. We don't know if it's going to be in 1 year, 5 years, or 12 years, but it's coming. And when that hits, that's why us accelerationists are working 12 hours a day studying this, because it's almost like a divine intervention that we are just getting really close to. And it feels like an incredible time to be alive.
So on one hand, incredible time to be alive. And for many, they would question, hey, great. That's exciting. And yet, where might there be some ethical questions, or where might there need to be guardrails put into place? And I guess curious on that perspective, if you um, kind of where you stand from kind of that area, and if there is kind of like an existential threat coming, because if the AI can teach itself and there's accelerated intelligence and the AI is way smarter than any human intelligence can bring forward, how to manage that as a human race.
I mean, there's only one example in the history of the planet where a vastly higher intelligence, somebody with lower intelligence was able to control something with higher intelligence. And that the only example we can think of is babies and their mothers, right? These super low IQ children can scream and get what they want from people that are vastly more intelligent. That's the only example we've ever seen. So controlling something that has an IQ of 500, I don't think that's that like I don't know how that's going to happen. So this what you're talking about here referred to as alignment, is just making sure that AI has our best interests. Some of the stuff that a lot of it is theoretical, but developing AI system 1 that would oversee AI system 2 that would oversee AI system 3, so that they have these step changes of intelligence. But I think, like, there's so much uncertainty. I don't want to talk too much about that. I'm definitely not the expert. There's so much uncertainty there. I think the good news here for those of us that are feeling like, hey, slow this shit down, it's moving too fast. I mean, humans slow everything down. Let's just look at the government. I mean, so it's not going to be the technology that's going to slow things down. It's going to be humans and government and policies, I believe. But it's pretty fascinating. If you wander down that path, Corey, like, oh man, you're going to have trouble sleeping. Like I've been reading all papers about this, like mutually assured destruction, this MAD, great acronym for like developing these defense systems so that like if China's AI gets out of the box, then we're going to bomb their data centers and vice versa. And just having that threat, kind of like people having nuclear powers, keeps us safe because we don't attack, they're developing these systems to prevent that from happening. So just if China knows that the Americans will nuke all of their data center, blow up all their data centers if they cross this threshold, that mutually assured destruction, kind of like having nuclear weapons on either side, will prevent runaway growth from happening. Because if you know that you cross that threshold, that you're going to start World War III, maybe you won't cross that threshold. But it is a fascinating topic. You might want to edit this out. I don't want to freak anybody out, but I mean, like I said, it's a journey of 1.6 million kilometers. There's so many different places that you can wade into it. You can look into like the people side, the ethics side, the legal side, the copyright, the IP, into the change management. You could go into the how do I use it? How do I be better? The future, the fairness, the distribution, what comes next. David Shapiro is if you want to get into some of that future stuff, David Shapiro on YouTube, he's a futurist, and he talks about like post-labor economics, like how does the world work when we don't have to work, and what is the meaning economy? So there's so many different fields of AI. And I think like with anything, when it's rapidly expanding and changing, there's just so much to learn. Find the part that you're most passionate about, become the expert at that. That's where I would focus most of my time. And then spend the 10% to understand the big picture, where it's going. But you really kind of have to choose your path, because it's everything, everywhere, all at once. And if you try to like answer all of these questions, it's like going to university and trying to be a specialist in everything, getting a degree in everything. You go marketing, and even with marketing, go digital, and within digital, go social, and with social, pick Facebook. You can't do more than that. Your head will explode.
So bringing it back, we're coming up to the end of our time here, and I guess it's so big, and so bringing it back to, let's give people a little bit of a sneak peek. So you're one of our keynote speakers at Memo Creative Festival, and curious, like, what is your session going to dive into? What kind of experience or conversation do you hope that people are going to walk away from your experience at Memo with?
Well, it's always challenging speaking at conferences because there's such a wide range of expertise. You'll have some people that are just dabbling with AI, you've got other people who are experts. So one thing I'll be trying to doing is to hit a little bit of something for everyone, start slow, warm it up, and then finish off with some like mind melting things, even for the experts in the room. That's my goal. But I think like the biggest opportunity that most people haven't unlocked yet is realizing like this is way more than just ChatGPT, or this is way more than using tools like Midjourney or VO3. I think the opportunity that most people haven't stepped into yet is like you can automate all this stuff, and showing them the vision. Like we're building a prototype right now for VO3 automation, like we sort of talked about earlier, and saying like, this is how you do this. This is how you look at your work as a series of systems and processes. And once you can get agents to do all that stuff for you and you realize how easy it is to do that, it takes the value and the power of AI and it puts like a multiple of 10 behind it. So I'm going to sort of warm people up. I had a list here of like, it starts with basics of prompt engineering and custom GPTs and API connections, and then it progresses into the agentic system. So I'm going to be pushing up into agents and automating your workspace and saying like, how does, you asked some great questions earlier, like how does the creative process change in a world of AI agents? I think that'll probably be the theme of the talk. But it's
Very
changing
cool.
every day.
Yeah, and I think about from the first time I took in one of your webinars. It was a series of webinars through EO last December, I think, and the amount of change and shifts that have happened from then to now, which is like literally 8 months. It's been just revolutionary in what the tools can do and how many tools there are, and how the agent evolution and how that's all come to light. So super excited to hear more about that and to see and hear about your sharing of your experience and your knowledge, and helping people to figure out what is that next step that they can take, whether that's the first step or whether that's step 10 on the path to 1.6 million kilometers to to get where they're going to be. So huge thank you again for being a part of the podcast, being a part of the festival, and super excited to see you at Memo on October 2nd and 3rd in Saskatoon.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey.
Okay, appreciate it.